And what I'm finding is that even in skill development now for Claude users, it's just there's a lot of slop because
Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. And we're ready to begin. Okay. Alrighty, awesome now, Rocky. Thank you so much for coming to the Dear Business Coach podcast today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, Rocky, I would like to just ask you a little bit about your background and how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like that's changed a lot in the last like 6 months in particular. But so I lead the team at Revenue Zen. We're like traditionally a digital growth marketing agency, and we've really focused in the past in SEO strategies, content strategies, helping our clients really move the needle on their inbound marketing channels. Over the last year and a half with AI, that's changed quite a bit. And so we've expanded our scope to also include GEO strategies, so AI visibility inside these LLM tools, and more broadly speaking, working with our clients to really help them understand AI better, how they can incorporate it into their business, um, things of that nature. So we're a little bit more broad than we were maybe 2 years ago, and then we were also acquired, so we're part of a larger holding company now, and just more people, more things that we can do. So we work really closely with another agency called Eastern Standard, and they really focus on like website development and branding. So those are kind of the key areas that we're going to now focused in across the board as a unified team.
Wow, that's actually something worth noting here is what you just said there about being acquired and being working closely with another agency. You actually pointed something out that I've often wondered about, where the goal is kind of for some businesses to think about branding and AI together. Is that sort of what was happening with Eastern Standard? Is that what you were thinking, or am I off here?
In terms of like bringing like their branding work, and yeah, I think more broadly, like across the org now, we're thinking about like how can we use AI in everything that we're doing. And so a common phrase that we're using, whether we're talking about content or brand or website development, is that the barrier of entry is a lot lower than it used to be. And so our work is changing, or it gets speeding up, like time that projects used to take, 3 or 6 or 9 months. We're now able to truncate that, into, half or a third of the amount of time that it used to. So yeah, like I think AI and branding is definitely impacted by AI, I should say. And like we're definitely embracing that change more or less. But I wouldn't say like that was the reason for the merger or the acquisition. It's just kind of the serendipitous, I suppose, that we're in this position.
Okay. Well, you actually got me thinking about how we talk to our teams about AI and
Mhm.
what happens when you start thinking about not explaining AI, not dumbing down AI, but what you think about in terms of what your team needs to know, needs to hear, would like to know, would like to hear, and fosters a place where people want to learn. Visit the deals page, dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com/deals. Get your coupon codes there for all of the retailers who support the Dear Business Coach podcast and are giving you a special discount for being a listener here. You are listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker and expert guests.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think it's helping everybody on your team kind of have their own aha moment with AI. Because I think for me that happened, I don't know, a couple months ago, really. Like I've been using AI for the last year and a half for various things, like probably like how a lot of people were using it. I explored some custom GPTs. I had it help me write emails, had it do some research for me. It wasn't structured though. It was just like kind of like this tool that floated off on the side, and occasionally I would use it. And then about 2 months ago, when I started using Claude Cowork and Claude Code more robustly, I kind of had a day where I had like shockingly like 3 or 4 hours where I didn't have anything on my calendar. And I was able to get like multiple screens going, and I had multiple AI agents working on different projects. And over the course of 3 or 4 hours, like I didn't do anything other than project manage, 3 or 4 AIs. And I just got so much work done. I just got tons of stuff done. And I realized in that moment that it wasn't like the value wasn't that the AI was doing the work. The value was that like I knew how to get the AI to do the work that actually needed to be done. And so I say that because most people who I talk to in AI, whether that's friends or colleagues or employees of mine, in the conversation is oftentimes like, oh yeah, I use it to help me write emails, and it's kind of surface level. And what I want from my team moving into the future is like we need to be thinking about more robustly how can AI essentially replace button clicks that we're doing. When we're getting data, when we're pulling data from, Ahrefs or data for SEO or whatever tool, like how can we utilize AI to run a command inside of Claude or a skill and then have that give us a whole bunch of information that we can then use from like a strategic perspective and not have to be the ones where we're spending a ton of time like diving into the repeatable kind of minutia of tasks. And so that's the way I talk about this with my team, and my goal with them is often like help them find that aha moment. And it oftentimes just, I find the thing that they spend a lot of manual time on that doesn't bring them joy and also doesn't provide like a ton of value to clients, but is necessary as like a building block to something else that does.
Mm.
And we work on like outsourcing that more or less to an AI agent, like within their existing workflow. And like that has really been the crux of like, I think what it takes to be successful, to getting them to think about how should I be using this tool in my everyday, work.
That was a really, really good answer. You said a couple things there, like, of course, the aha moment. Yes, you said that. Thank you for putting it that way. That is right. A great way to think about it. A great way for me personally to grasp it. Aha moments are something that we look for in feedback, and then you're taking that and saying, yeah, yeah, I want you to experience this for yourself. And I often think about that when I'm talking with people in my life, is what's the effect that I'm trying to have on this person? What is it that I wish they would experience? Why am I trying to impart this point or something? They need to learn it for themselves, is what I always come around to. And
Mhm.
what's the art in that? And so you just said it. I want people to have find their own aha moments, and you just shared what that was like for you. And I'm picturing you working um, kind of as you do from day to day, doing your best thing, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I need like 8 hands right now, right now, right now. And as I know what me personally, Rocky has to provide as an outcome at the end of my week, at the end of my day, uh, you said I basically need to get through tasks to get to the
Yeah,
thing that matters the most, that only Rocky can do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think also. we can't fall into this trap that like the output that AI is going to give us. Like I think everybody's had this experience of like AI slop. It's
Mm.
ubiquitous. Like everybody has like, oh, they've tried GPT. Like I've heard this, I don't know how many times. Somebody said like, oh yeah, we tried using AI to write our content. It was just garbage. And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, then I'll dive into the details of like, how did you train it? Like, oh, we didn't. Like, oh, did you give it brand guidelines? No. Like,
Mm.
oh, well, the AI is only going to be as good as the time you put into it. And like right now, my LinkedIn feed is just like inundated with people who are building Claude skills and like offering those for free. And I'm the kind of person that like I'm just really curious about what other people are doing. And so I'll be like, yeah, I want your skills, and I'll just test it against like the skills that I have built. And I just then I run it through an analysis, like which one's better. And what I'm finding is that even in skill development now for Claude users, it's just there's a lot of slop because people are just trying to quickly throwing things together to make it part of their content strategy on LinkedIn to drive more eyeballs to their page. And realistically, where the value of that comes from is really understanding like who you are and the things that you stand for and like why you started your business or the role that you have in that business and why you're important. And how can you train an AI to be like a clone of you and how you think to a certain extent so that it makes all the tasks that you're already doing that much more quick. And you can just be like, hey, I need like, for example, every week I have a scheduled task within Claude now where it drafts me out like 5 LinkedIn posts. And I have it do like a whole thing of research. It connects to the various blogs that I read and newsletters and marketing individuals like Kevin Indig, who I follow, and it pulls like relevant information that they're talking about, and it says, "Hey, contextually related to revenues in and what we're doing, like you should talk about these things too." And then I can look at those first drafts, and it's like 80% of the way there. And then I add, I edit, I bring in, like I'll train like the AI to ask me for experiences or examples of what it's talking about so I can feed it into the content. And that's what separates, in my mind, good content from just trash. Because like I'm giving it things that only I know. And if you're not doing that with your AI, then by nature, the way that AI is programmed to work, it's just going to go find the next word programmatically that fits the sentence. It's not thinking, quote unquote. It's just like estimating what is the next most likely word to use here, and it's doing that by pulling in data from online sources. And so that's why we see so much content now that it sounds so blah. It's because not enough people are using AI in a way to amplify their own voice and tone. They're letting the AI do everything. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
You guessed right as to like how it, well, from experience, not guessing, but if you were guessing how I try to fuddle through using AI and figuring out what to do with it, that's exactly right, right? I am wondering how to interact with it. So it does give me better quality. And you just gave me an example. I was actually writing down kind of the steps of what you just said in terms of asking your tool to find an example of the content that it's incorporating for you. And then you, Rocky, or I, Elizabeth, can actually take that information and then I can feed that
Yeah.
data example back into the content, and brilliant, that is brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
I
that's
would think of
brilliant.
that. Thank you. Yeah, I would think of that as like your own personal knowledge base. Like that's kind of how I look at it. And anytime where I see something that resonates with me, or I write something, or occasionally I'll say something on a call, I'm like, ooh, like that really resonated with this prospect, or that really resonated with my team. I'll add that into my personal knowledge base. And that's the document that the AI pulls from. Like when it's crafting content for me, when it's doing research on my behalf, I have it put its responses through this lens of my knowledge base and how I want it to behave. And that is, I think like it's a building thing that it's never done, right? Like I think this is, and one of the other things that I always do now when I'm prompting Claude in particular is I'll give it a prompt, and at the end of the prompt, I'll be like, "What questions do you have to make this like the best possible outcome?" Um, and oftentimes it will come back and it'll ask me clarifying questions. It will say, "Hey, when you said this, did you mean X or did you mean Y?" And it will oftentimes give you like a multiple choice answer sheet. And I just think like that's really how you train AI over time to get you where you want to go. And so when I see all these skills coming out, for example, on LinkedIn, and people are offering these libraries on GitHub and so on and so forth, um, I'm looking at that and being like, that's cool that people are doing that. But the real magic is how do you take that skill and how do you build a framework around it that is uniquely you or uniquely your business or for us, we do this for our clients too. So like, how is this uniquely our clients? And there's all sorts of data and really information that we need to pull from them to make the outputs valuable. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway for me is that AI is not a replacement for really anything. AI is a tool. It's like I think of it as like a word processor that writes
Mm.
for me at like a million times the speed that I can write. That's how I think of it. I don't think of it as like this replacement of me. It's not because I have to go through and review everything that it's doing, at least for the time being. 6 months from now, maybe this changes. But yeah, like the input that we put into it is going to be directly correlated to the quality of the output we get out of it.
Well, definitely. What is something that you encourage people to learn first? Like we were kind of talking a little bit about classes, weren't we? Or in the education idea or sphere of learning AI. So I told you when we talked before, uh, that I was thinking about taking an AI class. That I had talked to a woman a couple weeks ago she's recommended an AI class to me, and she is a small entrepreneur, and I perceive her as somebody who would be kind of going to that class for the same reasons that I would. So I thought, well, this person's recommendation would be fitting for me because we're probably on the same skill level and that sort of thing, or in the same interest level and that sort of thing. And then when I talked to you, I thought, well, I don't know if I should take her class because it might not be relevant right now. And that was a month ago. And so, can you give me some insight? Like, should I spend money on an AI class?
That's a really great question. I think for some people, like people who like really crave structure and they like having a class and a curriculum and a schedule, I say go for it. Like, I've looked
Mm.
at a bunch of AI classes and like even if you go on like Udemy, there's tons of AI courses on Udemy and they give you that. The downside of the AI courses is that they've been developed over the last, like they're probably 3, 4, 5 months old at this point. And Claude, for example, which I think is becoming kind of the go-to gold standard for, co-work and usage and things of that nature. Um, they're shipping updates like daily, like pretty much every single day. I have to relaunch my code or my Claude to get the new updates. And so I think so long as we recognize that if you take that course, I just don't think of any of those things as written in stone, right? Like what
Mhm.
you learn there is going to be valuable. It's going to help you understand the tool. But it's not the end all be all. Like it is not like getting a certificate. Like, oh yeah, I now know Claude. It's like, well, to know Claude, you have to be in Claude like every day using it, understanding the updates that are happening. And so for me personally, what I do is I follow like 2 or 3 YouTubers who are posting about Claude updates like every day. And I just follow them. In the mornings or in the evenings, I'll watch, a 20 or 30 minute YouTube. Oftentimes they'll have like school communities that you can join if you want to pay. Like I think joining a school community and paying like a monthly subscription and like really honing in on how a particular person that you resonate with uses the tool, I think that's probably more valuable than a course that goes from like point A to point B. because that school community will just like this be this evolving amount of content. And if you go back through their catalog, you can essentially build your own course with their catalog of their content. And so that's
Mm,
probably the route I would recommend. And then the other thing I would say is, just start talking with the AI as much as you can
mm,
and start asking it. I think this is another thing is like we don't know the limits of AI, in terms of what it can do for us. And so I think we put these like kind of guardrails on AI that aren't necessary because we think like, oh, it's not going to be able to do this step for me. Like I have
mm,
to do this. And in reality, I think the better question is like, if you're not sure, ask Claude or ask GPT or ask Gemini and be like, hey, this is what I want to accomplish. This is how I'm doing it today. Like, help me figure this out. And like, as an example for me, what did I do? How did I do this? I took our entire SOP library, all the work that we used to do, like our audits, our research, that was super manual and it would take hours of time from a strategist to complete. I just dropped our templates for the output and also our written
mm,
SOP into Claude. And I was like, hey, I want to build a skill around this. I want to improve upon it. And so essentially what I trained it to do, or I asked it to do rather, is go do research, find out if this SOP is the end all be all of how to do this deliverable that we're working towards. Like this is like a technical SEO audit, for example. Is this the end all be all of the best technical SEO audit that any marketer could possibly get? And if it's not, let's go ahead and like update this SOP to make sure that it is up to snuff.
mm,
And so I'd go out and do that. I'd be like, okay, now take this. I want to build a skill around this so I can just execute this and I don't need to go do the web crawl, the Ahrefs, research. I don't need to look at keyword densities and competitor analysis. I want you to do all of that. And if you
wow.
can't do it, tell me where you fall short and like we'll figure that out. And it ended up, I had to get a couple of tools that I didn't have already. Like data for SEO is one, a couple other like scraper tools. But once I pulled it together, I mean, it coded everything for me in this skill. And now, I can get a technical SEO audit, which used to take several business days to turn around for a client. It would take, 4 or 5 hours of time from somebody to do. Now I can do like 90-ish% of that audit in about 20 minutes and it gets me
Mm,
an output. And so, I think don't put limits on what you think the AI can do. It's probably like, and I've seen this from my team where they'll say, oh, I don't think it would be able to do that. And my immediate answer to that is like, why do you think that? And they're like, oh, I guess I just have this assumption. And I was like, yeah, let's not assume things with AI right now. And as we like dove into it, and I think doing like lunch and learns with your teams or like Monday morning briefings where like the time is intended to be like, hey, like who's the most AI forward person here? We're going to bring project
mm,
ideas to you. We want you to build this thing. And like I did this the other day or a couple weeks ago with my team where they were like, hey, how do you know what to write on LinkedIn? And I was like, hey, let's build a skill inside Claude. And so I pulled up my Claude, I screen shared, and I was like, Jake, what do you think we should do? Like, how should we build? Like, what are the things that are important with respect to this particular deliverable? And he gave me a list of things. And I just typed it all out, I put it together, and then I prompted the in Claude and it just started building. And by the end of the conversation, like 15 minutes later, we had this working prototype of a skill. It wasn't perfect, but it showcased to the team. It's like, hey, this is how easy it is to move from 0 to 1. And then once you're at 1, it's really easy to iterate and edit and modify to get to, you're never going to get to perfect, but to get to a lot better, and just, make it a part of your workflow. So I realize I just threw a lot at you. So I'll stop
Thank you.
there.
I appreciate it. I have my notebook. Thank you, Rocky. Yeah, well, so you basically wanted to make sure that I was thinking about asking AI to tell me, right? If it can't really do a step for me, but to interact with it, practice
Mhm.
talking to it. And that's kind of a psychological emotional process to go to, right? To go through is to go from the idea of, hey Claude, write me a line of code or write me an email, or can you go out into the big world of the internet and research something for me? Those are things I know how to do. Those are things I know how to tell it to do.
Mhm.
Asking it to tell me when it cannot do something or if it's missing a step is not something I would think of asking it, right? Like that's truly conversing, right? Is to ask for look for omissions or limitations and say to a tool, what am I missing here? And that's kind of wild because I that's the opposite of what I would think of a tool, right? The tool can't answer things to me that it doesn't have, correct? And
Right.
you just said, actually, if you phrase it differently. So that's kind of what I got out of that. But
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction too, is like you use the word converse. And
mm,
like to converse is a very human thing.
mm,
It's not something you would typically use to describe a machine. And I think at
mm,
least in the work that we're doing for our clients, when we're talking about like AI visibility and marketing, we're also finding that like the way people are interacting with LLMs right now is much more human than the way that they interact with like a Google search bar, for example.
mm,
And like that is really interesting data point. The other thing I would mention about kind of what to think about with Claude or like pitfalls to avoid is that if you don't ask it those questions of like, hey, tell me when you don't get me the data that I'm looking for. Oftentimes what AI will do is it will hallucinate that data and it will
mm,
pretend like it exists. And like we have seen this at like, the largest scale of government, the Department of um, Health and Human Services released a report and it had like a bunch of case studies or studies that it had referenced in the report, and all of those studies were hallucinated, and and they released it to the public, and that was there's obviously a big problem with that, but I think it illustrates this point really, really well, which is like the AI's job, like if you were to think of it as thinking, which that's kind of not the right way to describe that, but if that's how we were like to characterize it, and when the AI is thinking through things, it's not trying to be logical. What it's
mm,
trying to accomplish is to give you the next plausible output. And if it doesn't have the thing that it thinks, quote unquote, is the next plausible output, then it will make it up. And so one of the things that I do in all of my Claudes, like in my Claude MD file, in all my projects within Claude, is I give it very explicit instructions, every skill I have, which is like, hey, you can't make up data. You can't just like pull things out of thin air. You can't hallucinate these things. You can't like I give it very strict guardrails on the things that it cannot do. And this became really apparent to me when I had it produce like a round of content for my LinkedIn calendar. And it started giving me these facts, like these data points. It was like 83% of this and
mm,
72% of that. And I was like, and I was just asking, he's like, hey, where did you pull that number from? And it's like, oh, I inferred this based off of so much such and such. And I was like, you can't do that. And I was like, at that moment, I was like, oh, I have to tell it that it can't do those things. And it reminds me of this is a funny story. When I was in third grade, I had a teacher who pretended she was a robot. And she was like,
mm,
hey, I want you guys to tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And she had a loaf of bread that was still in its packaging, peanut butter and jelly. And like one of the students was like, yeah, like take out the peanut butter. And she like started trying to stab through the lid of the peanut butter. And they're like, no, 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 you get to take the lid off. And so like, okay, take the lid off and then like take out the peanut butter. And then she like took the lid off. Then she used her hands to take out the peanut butter. Like, no, no, use the knife. And then she was, all right. And then they're like, all right, now put it on the bread. And so she took out the peanut butter and then she like put it on the plastic packaging on the bread. And it's like a perfect example of how to think about these things. Like you do need to be explicit with the AI based on
mm.
what you want to get out of it. And if you let it run amok, it will run amok and it will like really create problems for you. And you'll end up, especially if it's like a longer form piece of content, you'll end up making mistakes in that content because
Mm.
The AI is just, it's not programmed to be accurate. It's programmed to get you the next most likely thing. And if it thinks the most next likely thing it should be X, and X doesn't exist yet, it will find a way to infer that X should exist. Um, yeah, I'm sure
And
there's
that's
probably
why
some
you
AI
have to check
engineers.
it. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. And I'm sure there's probably some AI engineers out there who are gonna be like, that the totally the wrong way to think about this. But like I think from a practical use case, for everyday people who are working within AI and like trying to incorporate it into their workflows, I think that's a great place to start. So every time I build a skill now, the first thing I always say is like, hey, you cannot make anything up. You have to pull data. If you can't pull the data, you have to tell me that you couldn't pull the data from the
Mm.
sources. Like if you can't get this particular data point from this particular data source, tell me, do not make assumptions on it. Do not try to figure out another way. Because oftentimes what it will do, like if I say, hey, go to Ahrefs to pull keyword data, and if for whatever reason the Ahrefs MCP is broken, then it will like go online and like start doing like some additional research on its own, and then it will kind of infer what it
Mm.
thinks the data should be based on that limited research. And it sometimes it could be super accurate, and sometimes it could be way off. And so yeah, like I like to give things like pretty explicit guardrails on the things that really matter, but then give it some level of freedom when I say, like, hey, if I want to improve something, don't like, let's pretend like I'm not the smartest person in the room. Like, why don't we just go, like, let's make that assumption. I'm not the smartest person in the room. There are other people out there who have a better technical SEO audit than I do. Let's find them. Let's find their SEO audit and let's build a better SEO audit based on what I have and what they have. That's a great use case I think, for AI. But yeah,
Yes, yes, you did a really excellent job describing your third grade teacher and sharing that story. I could see her. And have you heard of Amelia Bedelia, the children's book character?
no,
Okay, well,
which is funny. I have three kids.
okay, well, Amelia Bedelia was a nanny and a housekeeper, I think, and everybody loves her. The kids love her, the parents love her, the neighbors love her. But if you tell her to go outside and prune the bushes, she'll take prunes from the cabinet and stick prunes on the bushes outside. And that was what the whole storybook was about, the story series. And I just feel a lot like her sometimes, and trying to do the best thing. And what you're saying is, it's speaking to as well. Like, why is it that when I ask AI to help me write something, for example, uh, it'll do a fairly good job, but if I'm not happy with the first version and I ask for it to revamp or improve, if I don't give it something more or give it something else or converse with it a little bit, then the next version's worse. And then the next version's worse. And I'm wondering
Mhm.
how many people are doing this, sitting around saying, type me an email to my potential client. And it just is awful. And I say, you know what, that wasn't any good, Claude. Will you do it again? And then the next one's just even worse. And I just can picture myself, that it's not Claude's fault. It's me. I didn't give it anything to use. And now you're, as the expert, sharing with me something that is an aha moment for me, which is you're not you're not going to, you can't use a tool as somebody who is automatically going to be an all-knowing expert, right? Claude's not
Yeah,
an expert, and I think of it as somebody who is. And so
right.
even though I know Claude can make mistakes, when it infers data, I think it's getting actual data from somewhere. And I think, oh, well, there you go. Where would that come from if it weren't factual somewhere? And you said that basically a tool may also be giving you the next probable word in a sentence or the most common next synonym or something. And
Exactly.
that is a very clarifying understanding. It's not the most accurate, it's the most next probable. That's
Bingo.
very important to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of these LLMs, not all, there's a couple that are different, but most of them are trained on it's an algorithm where it's essentially putting words in sequence based on the likelihood of, X word follows Y word, follows Z word. That's how it programmatically thinks, and quote unquote thinks. There are a couple AIs. Mm, I know one. So Writer is an AI, and as I understand it, their AI is trained on context, and so that's a little bit different. But for the most part, like we need to be really careful and like really think about when, especially when we see factual information that comes from an AI, like is it factual? And it becomes very easy to build this like echo chamber with
Mm,
AI because it will just start giving you things. And if you're like, oh, I don't like that, or I do like this, when you're making recommendations, you'll oftentimes see it like, oh, that's a great idea, or you're totally right, or oh, I'm sorry I missed that. And it kind of like elevates the user onto this pedestal, so to speak.
mm,
Um, and so I think that's one thing to be wary of. But an easy way to like get started on like for emails, for example, for anybody listening, if you want it to sound like you in your emails, one of the things that I did yesterday, actually, and I'll do this occasionally, is I'll be like, hey, Claude, create a personality test for me. Go do research on personality tests, come back and give me 50 questions and that I have to answer. And then it will give me like my personality. And like here's also like a hack that I recommend everybody do. I don't type very often anymore. I'm using a tool like Whisperflow. Highly recommend you click a button twice on your keyboard and you just talk into your microphone. Most people talk at about 140, 150 words per minute. And like how quickly you can go back and forth with Claude by talking to it is like way faster. And especially when it gives you like, hey, here's a list of 50 questions. You can just go through the list and be like, brain dump everything about who you are, and then you can have it run it through an analysis and give you like a disc personality profile of who you are. So that's great. That's one thing to do. And the other thing to do is like give me a brand. I need a personal brand identity doc. Like run me through again like 30 questions to make sure that every piece of content that you write from here sounds like me. Do all the research necessary to pick up on the things that you need to be able to do that. And then again, it will like give you this information, you answer the questions, and then it has this output. Now within Claude specifically, ChatGPT, you can save that as a memory, like it kind of automatically saves in like everything you do from that point forward.
mm,
Claude is a little bit different.
mm,
It depending on how you're using it. If you're in a project, it will do that within the project. But if you're not in a project, it's kind of starting from scratch every time you're opening a new chat with Claude. And so I have a bunch of projects and I have them very specific. I have like a sales project, I have a marketing project, we have individual client projects. And anytime I'm doing an output within a project, it will save that output into the memory of that project. And so now I know, like in my LinkedIn content writing, it has my disc personality, it has my ICP information, it has my personal brand
mm.
identity, it has all the facts and figures about revenues in and how we do things and our belief structure and philosophies and all this stuff. And every time now that it writes content, it looks at all of that and it says, okay, I now know this guy, Rocky, and I now know a lot about revenue Zen. And I will also feed it kind of what we were talking about earlier. Hey, here's a great example post of how I communicate, or here's a text message exchange between myself and my wife in terms of the things that are important to me. And I just keep giving it stuff so that it's like, oh, and it's starting to build. I think I mentioned this earlier, this AI twin of me. And so every time now when it's putting something out into my drafts folder, it sounds more and more like me. And it's getting to the point now where, like for example, I have a skill that will run through my CRM and my calendar and a few other data sources, and it will find people who I haven't followed up with recently or who've kind of gone dark or conversations have stalled, and it will automatically draft an email to them that is contextually relevant to our most recent either phone call conversation transcript or our most relevant or recent email communication. And then it will ask me like, hey, what do you want this email to accomplish? And I can be like, I want it to do an Alex Hermosi offer for a AI visibility audit. And bam, it pulls in all the skills that it needs and then it does the thing. And so every morning I'm having this thing run automatically and it gives these recommendations. And I think that is how we use AI into the future, at least for the next, 3 or 6 months until this, agentic AI comes out and it kind of changes the game. But for now, like this is, I think, the best way to think about AI is like, how can I like, I got to do these things. I have to write these emails every day. I have to follow people. How can I make sure that I can train an AI to a point where it does it and it does it incredibly well so that it sounds like me, it feels like me, and it's contextually relevant to all the conversations I'm already having. And the technology now is there for that. I would say like a year and a half ago it wasn't, but now like you can really do that, but you do got to spend time with it, build out those personal brand identity documentation, and make sure it's referencing that, whenever it's executing a skill on your behalf.
Yeah, that would be what I would want to spend basically a whole like class period with you. I know you're not in the education field and making you sound like you are you are an educator, but you're with revenues in as a CEO. And but we are actually, yeah, covering something really important there about what you've already at the beginning of our conversation today. You gave us some examples about how you can build things that you're doing, build tools into your everyday tasks, and how you can start kind of telling it training it about who you are and on a daily basis. And you gave me another picture of I'm picturing yourself I'm picturing you like making it, coming across something at your desk or maybe even in your car, for example, like, oh, I like the way this thing that I wrote sounded. This is a good example of me, and send it off to your tool and say, hey, keep note of this. Look at this. Keep this in your background because I
Yeah.
want you to note that this is a good writing piece for me. And I want to be respectful of your time. I've kept you over, but I still have a lot more to actually kind of pick your brain with. But I want to make sure people find you and connect with you and listen to this interview with you so that we can start using some of these daily basics, really just kind of learning how to talk to our AI
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me. I think I'm the only Rocky Pedden out there. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's the best place to interact with me. I publish content on LinkedIn almost daily. And that content's going to be about marketing strategy, go-to-market strategy, content operations. I talk a lot about AI as well. But yeah, like definitely feel free to jump in and into those conversations to anybody listening. And yeah, like that's probably the number one place. And I think the last thing I would say, recently I've been rewatching the Marvel movies with my son,
Mm.
and I think we're not very far. If you think about how Iron Man interacts with Jarvis, we are
Hmm.
not far from that. Like he has this AI personal assistant that's with him all the time, who knows him really well, who he just speaks to. Like that's where we're headed. And I can envision this future where it's like, hey, like you to your point, you're in the car and you hear something on the radio or like something pops into your head, you're like, oh man, I wish I was at my computer so I could record this. Like, I'm sure there's somebody out there right now who's just like, oh, hey, Jarvis, like record this for me and put this back into my Obsidian notes or something like that. And it like boom goes. And like we are like that is the way I think people should be thinking about this. Like Iron Man to Jarvis is not science fiction anymore. Like that is like how we should be thinking about how to interact with AI. So that's what I would leave everybody with, just because like that's I've been watching those movies with my 8-year-old or 7-year-old, and he seems to love that stuff. But yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, that is a perfect place to stop, Rocky Pedden. On LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, you are linkedin.com, IN Rocky Pedden, ROCKYPEDDEN.
Yep, that's it.
CEO at Revenues In. Okay, well, beautiful. And yeah, Iron Man and Jarvis, not science fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay, well, I would love to invite you back again soon. I thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right.
All
Talk to you next time.
right. Bye bye.
Bye bye. You've been listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name is Elizabeth Walker, producer and host of the Dear Business Coach podcast. Music by Stones Mayo. Social media by Meenakshi Bensal. Follow and subscribe now. Thanks so much. You are a superstar.